so this class, like we said, is about clean label baking and enzymes. And it was made possible today by our sponsors, Lallemand Baking. And I'm going to show just a quick video just so that we'll know a little bit about them and what they do.
At Lallemand, we are proud of our rich history of innovation. For more than 100 years, we have worked diligently to develop the expertise, knowledge, and flexibility that bakers demand. And while we're known for supplying high-quality baker's yeast and tailored ingredient solutions, we are much more than a yeast company. We are a company that understands the challenges industrial bakers face every day. And we employ our fermentation and enzyme technology expertise to deliver solutions that match your needs and deliver value to you and your customers. Look around, and it's pretty clear that consumers are getting more educated, reading labels, comparing prices. Research shows that consumers are demanding clean label products, those with a short and simple ingredient list. 63% of shoppers are extremely interested in eating clean, and of those, 72% want to avoid chemicals and artificial ingredients in their food. So the challenge that bakers face is to remove chemical-sounding ingredients. Lallemand Baking Solutions can help bakeries overcome these challenges. Our enzyme-based products from our Essential Dough Improvers portfolio are designed to replace emulsifiers like datum and reduce gluten without impacting your dough strength. Get rid of the unfriendly label ingredients and at the same time enhance product quality, improve production tolerance, and extend shelf life. So just imagine, you can make all the products your customers dream of while getting rid of the ingredients they can't pronounce, and at the same time reduce your production costs. Need a solution to your baking challenge? Let us tailor one to meet your clean label needs.
Okay, yeah, and so because of sponsors like Lallemand and the work they do in the baking industry is how we're able to offer this class free to all of you today. So yeah, and yeah, Keith, anything you want to add to that, or a little bit about what you do at Lallemand Baking?
Well, sure, I can start with a little bit about my background. So I'm a technical product manager for Lallemand. I've been with the organization since 2013, so 7 years now. Before that, I was with a Fortune 500 food company. And during my time, or during my career, I worked on products or touched products that include shake and bake, stovetop stuffing, Lender's bagels, Tombstone pizza, DiGiorno Rising Crust pizza, and Oscar Mayer Lunchables. So I have a pretty vast experience of products that I've worked on. So I'm excited to be here and share some of the knowledge that I have, but I'll put this disclaimer out there right now. I don't have all the information, and whatever I don't have, we'll certainly get back to Lynn and we can present back to, or I'm sure put it on your site to give the answers to the questions that I don't have the information on.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and we, exactly, we'll just get through this together. So yeah, we'll just go ahead and I guess start a little bit of the discussion. So yeah, from your point in the industry then, how would you sum up the clean label trend? You know, what exactly is that?
Okay, so interestingly, clean label, there is no legal definition, unlike organic. So that's kind of an interesting piece of information. Whole Foods really, was the driver of this trend. You have Trader Joe's, they have a list of unacceptable, banned, avoid if possible. You have Walmart, they're coming on strong now with what they want for clean label. In Canada, where I am right now, you have Loblaws. So I think more importantly, we have to think about what does it mean to the consumer? And
right.
From our perspective, if you look at the ingredient label, does it sound like a chemical? If you look at datum, when they look at that, diacetyl tartaric esters of monodiglycerides, is that something they really want to see? Is it an ingredient?
Mm-hmm.
Next question would be, is it something they would find in their kitchen cabinet or want to bake with or cook with? And, when I look at that, I have to use the example of ascorbic acid. Everybody, a lot of people will take ascorbic acid for vitamin C, but they don't necessarily cook it or realize that it really is fine, that it could be clean label, but they look at it as an ingredient that they may not want to use. Again, can you pronounce it? That's something to keep in mind. When they look at that, if it's a long name, sodium cerulactylate, I think that scares people, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Would you want to feed it to your children? An interesting note is that clean label ingredients, they're perceived healthier and they're more sustainable. You know, and moving forward, you know, interestingly, again, enzymes are something that people are okay with. They're fine with using enzymes, and they're key ingredients today moving forward with this clean label trend. So that's just something we all need to be aware of. And I think just based on what we just saw in that video too, you know, consumers today, they're more concerned with what's in their food, how it's made, and where the ingredients come from. So, I mean, I think that's just, you know, really important pieces of information that the baker needs to be aware of moving forward in developing new products.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's
Lin
awesome.
is-
Keith,
Yes.
I'm so sorry for my technical
course.
issues. My IT department just jumped in and gave me a new computer. Kidding, I just had to go run and get one. That's a great introduction. Thank you so much. Joanna, can I carry on with this?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great. In continuation of that question, Keith, what other enzymes and what do they do for the baker?
Okay, so I think you have to take a step back. So you really want to understand what enzymes are, just so we can ground everybody. So enzymes, they're modified proteins. They're produced by living microorganisms. They come from plant, fungal, bacterial, and yeast. Factors that affect their performance that are pretty straightforward: time, temperature, pH, and dosage. What do? You know, they replace emulsifiers. They can give you a reduction in mix time. They're going to improve your machinability. They're going to give you dough strength or increased volume. They're going to give you an increased shelf life or softness over time. I mean, those are the main benefits they do. The other things to consider, the enzymes are considered processing aids. So they don't need to be labeled. That's an important factor because they're inactivated during the bake. All enzymes, I want to touch on this, they're GMO free. The caveat is not all of them will be non-GMO verified. That's an interesting point. So all the really fun ones, the glucose oxidase, the phospholipase, the multigenic amylase, which everybody's familiar with, those will never be non-GMO verified. They will be GMO free, but non-GMO verified. And so the question is going to come in, well, really, what does that mean? It's when you harvest the enzymes, you get them from the microorganism. That microorganism, that has been modified using modern techniques so we can harvest them and use them, but the enzyme itself is GMO free. So you will get a sheet of paper for those really cool enzymes that we like to play with, but they won't always get the butterfly. So that's just something I really want to bring to light so everybody's aware of. Enzymes themselves, they're substrate specific. An important thing to remember is not everybody knows this. They can replace or reduce other ingredients, increase quality, reducing cost. What we find is when we go and work with the customers, we look at their formulation. They have a lot of opposing ingredients. We can take those opposing ingredients out, formulate with what we need, and we end up saving the baker money. It's all being transparent, working with the baker and the customer, and giving them the desired results that they're looking for.
That's awesome. So Wilfredo has a question. Can regular bakeries just purchase dough conditioners directly from your website?
No, you would want to come to us. We have regional sales reps, and that you can contact us and we will put you in charge of or in contact with a regional sales rep, and then we will work with you, find out what you need, and get you the product that you're looking for. And we're happy to send out samples, so no problem.
Right, and I wanted to just emphasize that usually dough conditioners are not off-the-shelf solutions. So it's more important for you to work with someone like Keith's technical support team to really get the right combination for your flour, because not everybody has the same flour as you. You might have a flour that's aged, or you might be working with flour that's been milled under 24 hours. The enzyme systems for those two things are completely different. So that's why, sponsors like Lallemand just can't offer off-the-shelf solutions for you.
Usually, to add to that, I would get that information. So it would go directly to the regional sales manager. They would contact me, and then, we would have a conversation to find out what your problem, how we can help you. And most of the time, I can just answer over the phone and give you guidance as to what you would need, how you'd want to use it. And it's pretty straightforward.
Exactly. So my next question for you is, how do you achieve a soft, moist, uniform crumb structure in white pan bread? And what ingredients can you use to manipulate that?
Well, years ago, the two things that were used were shortening and glutening. Those were really that's what everybody really
Shortening
used.
and gluten?
Yeah, but
Okay.
I don't know anybody today that uses shortening. The term shortening, it means shorten to bite. I don't know
Yeah.
if everybody knows that. I kind of like to share that because I find that not everybody's aware of that. But everybody uses oil. Oil's perfect today.
Mhm.
You can use gluten. A lot of people will use it just for processing to get it through the line. It depends on the age of your line, what you have, and how much banging your pans go through. That's just the reality that we go through. To achieve that fine, uniform, soft crumb structure, the reason you want that is because if you don't have a tight crumb, you'll have porosity. With that porosity, your crumb will be coarse. With a coarse crumb, it's not going to be that soft velvety texture that you're looking for. So you have to have the right amount of strength as the dough begins to leaven. And so there's usually a combination of enzymes that you want to use. You know, we have a product called CL732. It's got a combination of enzymes that's going to allow you to give you reduction in mix time. It's going to allow you to have the proper machinability. It's going to give you that strength when you need it. So when the bread starts to leaven, you get that fine, uniform crumb structure that you want. It's also going to have an amylase in there that's going to give you that softness over time. So it's going to accomplish all of these with just one product, also allowing you to eliminate sodium sterolactylate and datum.
Yeah, so as we move away from what we call dirty chemicals and into clean sounding enzymes, people who don't usually understand the function of enzyme, who try to use themselves, they don't get the same performance as the chemicals, right? We talk about datum and SSL and really providing that really strength and uniformity and softness. So you really need to find enzymes that substitute the function of these two really nice emulsifiers. After all, a lot of people forget that the structure provides a lot of volume and softness for that soft bite. So I would, pursue this with your technical advisors on trying to make sure that the enzyme solutions that you use at your plant is going to really strengthen the gluten, like what he say, and really provide that nice, soft, moist bite. Let's go quickly into the questions that are coming in on the Q&A, sure. Keith. What quantities of these flour improvers should we ideally expect when flour is bought? So what I'm thinking is this question is being asked as enzymes already blended into the flour when they buy the flour. So I think I need anonymous attendee to be a little more specific in the question. And answer me when you say,
well, it will come from the mill and with a certain amount of enzymes.
Let us know if you're asking about the enzymes from your mill. Then I think Keith will have a better answer for you. Okay. Dirk asks, in formulation, what typical ingredients or processing aids don't work well with enzymes and why?
Can you repeat the question again?
What typical ingredients or processing aids don't work well with enzymes and why?
Well, with whatever you're going to formulate with, they're all going to work well with enzymes because enzymes are substrate specific, so they will not have an impact. So you don't really have to worry about.
Right. Most ingredients don't. But don't forget, sometimes people are trying to add in sourdough components as well.
What I will say, what we do see is that over time formulations change because one year you have a weak flour, so you want to oxidize it. Then the following year it's too strong, then you need to weaken it. Then you're adding more reducing agents, and you keep on adding opposing ingredients, and eventually nobody really knows what you have in there and why. And there is a time when you need to just wipe the slate clean and take everything out and start from scratch and put what you need in so you get the right amount of strength, so you get the right amount of lift, And so you don't have these opposing ingredients.
Yeah. So one more comment on that. What do you think of pH? Will it affect the performance of the enzyme? So it will be like, what if they add in an acid, you know,
No.
or a sourdough component, or increase the fermentation time?
Well, you're not going to drop the pH low enough. You know, again, time, temperature, pH are all part of factors, but you'll never drop the pH low enough where you will have a problem where the enzyme is impacted, not in normal production baking.
Sounds good. All right, next question. How would you choose a fat for a bakery product? Would it depend on enzyme you use?
No, if I'm going to use a fat, any shortening is fine, and it's not going to impact the enzyme whatsoever. The enzyme will start to function as soon as you put it in the flour and it's mixed with water and it's hydrated. The enzyme will start to function. Fat will not make a difference.
Great. And next question by Anonymous. Can you talk about enzymes in cakes and muffins? I think we should talk about that later at the end of the session, because this session is mainly focused on shelf life for bread products. And Anonymous, we'll get back to your question at the end. Next, Matthias, what was the reason for coarse texture? I think that goes back to,
A coarse texture is really going to be you have more porosity in your crumb structure. Think of like an English muffin, very open crumb structure. And what you want to do is you want to tighten it up, and that you want to have enough strength so that when you go through your molder, you take those large air cells and you break them into very, very small air cell structures. They remain intact, and you have to have a right amount of strength so that you hold it in place so you get that honeycomb structure. So there's a certain amount of oxidation that is required for that.
Right. That's awesome. Next one. This one's really coming from a different angle altogether. How can you use enzymes for gluten-free breads?
That's the million-dollar question. There are very few enzymes that will work in gluten-free. So what you have to remember is you can get some softness, and you usually want to use a multigenic amylase. The caveat is the starch itself. How has it been modified? Because there are also all those, if it's a modified starch, it's really not going to work, because you just have so much substrate available that it's just going to keep on going. And it's very difficult to achieve what you're looking for. Yeah.
And do you have any kind of solutions for gluten-free, Keith?
Well, the main one that we would offer would be something that would have a multigenic amylase, and that's all we could recommend. And you have to trial and error, and it depends on the dosage and your process, and sometimes you can get away with it. Mm-hmm. And it just depends on if it's pre-gelatinized. You know, there's certain things you just need to remember. When it's pre-gelatinized, all that substrate is available. When it's chemically modified, you know, some of it, you know, you just end up having too much substrate available. But we send the enzyme, you test it, and you see where it works. And maybe you can modify your process where it's very, very short to get it through.
Yeah, and Rana, don't forget, Keith is just talking about the shelf life aspect, Rana.
Yeah.
And if you need any kind of processing enzymes, you need to realize that firstly, you're not replacing SSL and datum, because you don't need those in gluten-free. If you have any kind of machinability issue in gluten-free, then you need to look at off-the-shelf solutions like lecithin, other kind of emulsifiers that are not focused on strengthening the gluten part of things, because you don't need that. You don't need SSL, you don't need datum. So you need lecithins, you need polysorbates, and you really need to use more natural sources of emulsifiers like egg yolks, you know, like eggs, you know, so gluten-free systems are completely different from gluten systems. Just remember that. Okay, let's go on. Oh, Anonymous replied, it's enzymes from the mill. Okay. So really how much enzymes to use, and my take on that is it's just you decide with your mill on how much you want to put in. Is that right, Keith?
Well, typically the flour is going to come out of a mill set at 200 Bray Bender units. So it's a falling number test. That's really what they set up with. And they're going to add beta amylase is what they're going to add to give you that number. So it's somewhat standardized. And then from there, we know that already, and everything that we formulate is based on that.
Yeah,
So,
just to be clear on that, mills usually don't add any other kinds of enzymes, right?
no, they don't.
Yeah.
But like I said, they will balance it with beta to give you the 200 Brave Bender units. That's what they will do.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, next from Wilfredo. From the time enzymes are added and hydrated, how long do you have to process the dough and bake? Is there a time limit where enzymes can negatively affect your final baked breads? Great question.
Well, they're substrate limited, so it depends on the substrate. So I'm going to say, in theory, no. A benefit would be for if you're going to use an amylase, particularly a maltogenic amylase, the longer time you have, the less enzyme you have to use in your process. If you have a really long fermentation time and you're doing it in a straight dough, you'll end up using less because you have so much more time for things to happen. If your bake is longer, particularly with the maltogenic, again, you have that long bake time, so you're going to use less in your formulation. That would be a benefit of a longer time. But again, it's substrate specific. So as you bake the product, more starch is available. Again, that goes back to the maltogenic amylase. More substrate is available as the starch gelatinizes, and then therefore it has more ingredients in which, or substrate that it can break down, giving you that extension of shelf life that you're looking for.
That's true. So, totally in agreement with that. Next question is by Dirk. Dirk asks, if I'm looking for a shorter bite in a pizza crust. Great question, because Keith is the pizza guy. What a great question. Versus a chewier bite, a shorter bite versus a chewier bite. Does the type of enzyme matter, or is it really about changing the formula to achieve the result? What a great question. So
if you want a short bite, shortening is your answer. If you're in a pizzeria, you can afford to use shortening. Use shortening. It'll give you a shorter bite. One of the things to remember is, so when you do fermentation, it's going to give you more chew to your product. To me, the pizza is the perfect open face sandwich. Really, the hero are the toppings are the hero. So, keep that in mind. So with the toppings being the hero, you want to have a lot of maceration as you chew to extract every flavor that you can. I also have a culinary background. So the longer you macerate your product, so having chew in a pizza crust is actually a benefit, because you macerate that product longer, you get all the benefits. You can actually put less cheese on your pizza. You get the spices from the toppings that are actually going to carry through. And so longer fermentation is going to bring that out, and it's also going to give you that chew that you need.
If anything, Dirk, a lot of us, we're looking for actually a chewier pizza than a shorter bite one.
Yeah, most people don't want a short bite. They want that long chew.
Right. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question, Dirk.
But if you do want a short bite, shortening is your answer.
Yeah, there you go. Really easy. Anonymous asks, how can we use enzymes for wheat flour with high activity of alpha amylase enzyme? And which enzyme can be used in order to not cause rise and fall of dough during proofing? So 2 questions.
So you have a high falling number. So you're going to have more substrate available. So you're going to want to strengthen your dough. And that's the only thing you can do. In that case, I would recommend you want to use something that's going to have a glucose oxidase in combination maybe with ascorbic acid. We have a product called Essential 1019. Those 2 in combination are going to give you the lift that you need. And that's going to achieve the strength in the dough and get you through your processing. Ideally, though, if you have such a high falling number, you want to work with your mill to change that, because you don't want to have a high falling number. You want to be set at 200 Brave Bender units. Exactly.
So Anonymous, please reach out to Keith. His email is on there. Again, with the bakery website's email, bakery@lallemand.com. So you can get someone on a technical team to work with you. And Dirk, I totally understand that was a specific customer question, and that was such an easy fix. So no worries about it. Padma, how do you use flour with high starch damage? So how do you use bread flour for spongy cakes? That's a good one.
A bread flour for spongy cakes.
Yeah, a bread flour with high starch damage.
I don't think I'd want to use a high starch damaged flour. I would want to work away from that. But if you're going to use a bread flour, I don't think you'd want to use a bread flour for cakes, because cakes are much different. You want to use an all-purpose or cake flour for that.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I mean, your costs are going to be lower, right? And
yeah.
you're just going to have a really tough, chewed and a spongy cake. I mean, it's possible. It's just going to be a tougher cake, and it stales real fast too.
If I were to say, if you're going to use if you wanted to use enzymes, I would say you'd want to use a maltogenic amylase, something that we have in our Essential Soft 1910, maybe even in addition to a protease to break the protein down. I'm guessing, because
yeah. I wouldn't do that at all. I would just move it aside and use cake flour, unless you have too much of a high starch damage. I think that's where the issue is. What do you do if you have bread flour with too much of a high starch damage, Keith?
Again, it's just strengthening to compensate, and you're going to use less. If you're going to use less enzyme up front because you have so much starch available.
Yeah.
Again, if it shouldn't come out of the mill with more than 10%. It's in the range of 7 to 10%.
Well, that's what we always expect, but it's not always what we get.
It still has to come from the mill. So it's the reduction roll is that you do the break and roll.
I know.
That crack. And I would, if you're constantly seeing high damage starch, I would look for a different mill, because you can't make consistent product with that. Your ingredients need to be consistent. So you can't have high damage one time and then another time it's not.
Yeah.
So
if you are a male and you have this issue, it's time to put in some quality control points at your reducing rollers. And if you have accidentally create a batch with high damage flour, don't send that out. Keep it aside and put it in to dilute with the rest of the flour stream over time. Right. That's my suggestion. Don't sell it as high damage, high starch damage flour. It's not going to do anybody any good.
It's not going to do anybody any good. It's right. Not.
Yeah. Okay. Anonymous says, can we use enzyme in whole grain flour to improve the shelf life of whole grain bread? What type of enzyme is suitable? And is the oxidizing enzyme, does it work better, or xylanase work better?
Well, the enzyme system is going to work the same for white flour or wheat flour. So there is no change. If you want softness, you're going to want to use a product like again, our Essential Soft 1910. That's going to work just fine. For strength, it works the same. Xylanase is a great product to use in combination with the maltogenic, because one of the things I want to touch on with that is xylanases, they break down the natural gum in your flour. The gum in your flour is a tremendous gluten interrupter. And as it interrupts the gluten, you're not getting the full functionality out of the gluten that you have coming from the mill. So if you formulate with this type of enzyme, it's going to give you several things. It's going to release more water, so you have better hydration. It's going to give you better pan flow, better machinability. You're going to get increased lift and volume. So it's a benefit all the way around. So it's a great enzyme to use. So this in combination with a glucose oxidase and an amylase is a great trio to use.
That's awesome. Okay. Prannoy asks, what are the significant parameters that affect the quality of ascorbic acid used in bread improvers?
So, repeat the question again so I can put my mind around it.
What are the significant parameters that affect the quality of ascorbic acid used in bread improvers? Oof.
Okay, so let's just take ascorbic acid. So ascorbic acid, we think of it as an oxidizer, as a strengthener. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of information out there that in its true form, ascorbic acid is actually a reducing agent. It has to be converted to dehydroascorbic. So in its pure form, when you add it, right away it's a reducing agent.
Right.
So in the presence of oxygen, it is transformed into dehydroascorbic. Once it becomes dehydroascorbic, only then is it a strengthener, and only then can it pull hydrogen from your sulfide hydrogen groups to create disulfide bond linkages. So one of the things to remember with ascorbic acid is if you're using it with high yeast, yeast is a tremendous oxygen scavenger. Ascorbic acid really starts to work the end of your mix as you get into your intermediate proofer and in your proof box. That's really where it starts to kick in. So if you burn up all your oxygen up front before the ascorbic acid has a chance to work, it's a straight reducing agent and you're going to have a weak dough. So I think that's an important parameter to remember. Yeah. So it's a great oxidizer. It works well, but you have to be careful. Never should you ever go beyond 200, and a frozen dough should never be that high. You know, a normal level is around 90 parts per million.
How many people go higher than that? I've seen levels so much higher than that.
And they end up using more, when we see that too, and they end up using more oxidizers than they need to compensate for the weakness that's happening.
Yeah.
And that's opposing ingredients.
Yeah, that's why we need people like you at the plant, you know, just to take a look at this oxidation levels. It's really important, people. Okay, Praditi asks, do you decide the dosage of enzymes depending on the gluten content of flour, or what would your starting point for a desirable characteristic? Well,
I want to achieve the finished product height, shape, crumb structure that I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. I think when I go back to my days as a product developer, you know, you start out pure with just the basic ingredients: flour, salt, sugar, yeast, and then from there you start putting the building blocks in that you need to achieve the product that you want. And if you're not, you know, if you want a more uniform, fine crumb structure, you want a little more oxidation. If you want less, you don't need that. And it just depends on what you're trying to achieve. If we just stick with pan bread, you know, you put the basic ingredients together and you see what it looks like coming through your line. If you see that you have more porosity, you're going to want to add a glucose oxidase, a 1019 from our portfolio to strengthen it. If you don't have the softness that you want at the end, or you don't want to use mono and dyes, you put more a maltogenic amylase in our 1910. And that's going to give you that softness and allowing you to eliminate mono and dye. So it depends what you want to look for and what you're trying to achieve. If you don't want to use SSL and datum, you're going to want to look at something like our ER 100 and 200. That type of enzyme system will allow you to replace those emulsifiers. So they all work in combination. And when you do this, you end up saving money because those ingredients on their own are very, very expensive. That's enzymes true. Themselves, cost and use is low. We tend to put higher concentrations of enzymes because we want to work with the baker to keep our costs down. So that's something that we work hard to do for our customers. And then we put more research into our development. So that's just.
Yeah. Okay, that's great, Keith. So Praditi, just start with the end product and understand where you want to be. And then that's how you start with your enzyme usage and level. Carl, I need you to be a little more specific with your question, Carl. And what are you asking for? Because you asked, what are the contents of yeast? And that is like, I can write a whole book on that. So what are you specifically looking for in your question for yeast? So be a little more specific. Pranoy, what I wanted to understand is that, this is in continuation to the past question, Keith. Okay. What I wanted to understand is that the specific quality of ascorbic acid that helps to get a maximum result, for example, particle size, pH assay. Yeah.
You know, with ascorbic acid, regardless of your pH, it's going to work in just about every system. It's going to be an oxidizer, and it's going to strengthen, and it's going to allow you to get your disulfide bond links that you're looking for. So none of that's really going to factor in, whether it be pH. That's not going to make a difference with it. It's still going to tighten your dough and give you the lift and strength that you're looking for.
Right, and I also feel that what this person is asking is what quality does ascorbic acid, using ascorbic acid, result in? So what happens if you don't use ascorbic acid? I think that's how we should answer the question.
Well, the main reason you use ascorbic acid is it's not that you're not trying to change the crumb characteristic. You're trying to get the lift and volume that you want out of your product. That's really why you would use it. If you don't have the final end product height or bake height that you're looking for, that's when you're going to want to use ascorbic acid. It's going to give you that lift that you need. It's at one point it was very affordable, not so much these days. It's a little more expensive to use. But that's the main reason you would want to use it. There's no other, you're not looking for a characteristic change in your product. You're looking for it to get the final height that you're looking for.
Yeah, and also to add to that, a lot of people who test with ascorbic acid try to do it on a benchtop, and you just can't see any kind of results on benchtop. It has to be done on a production run.
Correct.
Because you don't have the stresses that are with the dough dividers, the dough conveying, the dough dividing, sheeting, whatever. You don't have that on a benchtop. So a lot of people try to understand what is the effect of ascorbic acid, and they try to do it on the benchtop, and just like, you can't do that. You know,
No, it's not gonna give you the same result because, right.
Yeah, you can't see it. So you really have to try it on a production run. And you can really see the effect of ascorbic acid from 0 ppm to just 100 ppm, a huge difference.
It's a huge.
So yeah, so go give it a try on one production run, and you can actually, you know, see the effect of
And I wouldn't do just one dough. You need to do 3 to 4 doughs with each variable. Like I would, if I wanted to do a study, I would look at 0, 30, 60, 90. That's kind of where I would break it out myself. That's how I would look at it and see. And each one of those, you will see an increase. And I would plan it for a whole day production where you're going to run 4 batches at each level, 0, 30, 90. And even if you want to go to 120, but I don't ever see the need to go beyond 120 parts per million.
No, I think you have a huge flour issue if you need to go to 120. It's too strong. You know, it's going to affect everything else. So
you'll start to see that, you know, when you get to 120, you will start to see that you'll never achieve the loaf volume. It'll be too tight. But when you slice it, it'll look fine, but it's just going to be a tight loaf. It's going to be
right, and you'll have white heels too. Yeah, absolutely. Let's switch gears to go into flour tortilla for a minute. Is there a way to make flour tortilla not crack after 3 days of shelf storage when we roll it?
Yes, there's 2 ways of doing it. And so I'll answer them both ways. You can do it one way with water. Water is a tremendous plasticizer. So what I would do in this case is I would want to add an inactive yeast at a high level. You know, add inactive yeast. We have a product called Fermade Relax. I would add that in. Yeast itself will hold 2 to 3 times its weight in water. So it's a great product to add. You already have yeast on your ingredient declaration, so you're good to go. The caveat to that is by the time you get to day 3 and day 4, you're going to mold because you've just taken your formulation out of balance with your water level. So you're going to mold a lot faster. You can achieve it with enzymes, which is really the right way to do it. The right one to use is a maltogenic amylase. What we have in our Essential Stuff 1910, a dosage of around 0.25 is going to give you what you need for 3 days of rollability. Actually, it'll go a lot longer than that too. But that's
so it's not how you bake. It's actually the enzyme.
The enzyme.
Okay,
got
it.
It's the enzyme. Right. You would think it's the bake. No, it's the enzyme.
Yeah, I would think it's the bake.
The enzyme.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the enzyme. The enzyme will work. That's what you need.
Awesome. Thank you. So Anonymous asks, is there a specific enzyme that dries out sticky doughs to improve processing and handling properties?
Not one that we have. Is there? I think if I go back to, I haven't run into this question in a long time.
Wouldn't something like glucose oxidase or like
well, you're going to create a peroxide, which
you have to create a peroxide, right?
Yeah, well, but I don't think you were going to add enough. If you added glucose oxidase, even at 0.5% based on something that I'm using in our Essential Soft products, you're not going to see that whitening effect.
That's true. That is true.
I think the enzyme lipoxygenase, if that comes to mind, I think you get that from soy flour. You see a little whitening.
Yes.
And drying up. Again, you're stressing my memory. That's been a long time.
Wow. The problem is you shouldn't be using enzymes to dry out sticky doughs.
No. Sticky
doughs is a huge issue with some other processing issue that you have.
Well, if you have a dough that, what I would recommend you, one, you're going to back down your water. 2, what I would recommend doing is, use something that has a xylanase in it or hemicellulase. We have products, ER 2000. You use this product, it's going to break down the pentasans in your flour. It's going to release a lot more water. You'll reduce your bake. In theory, you can drop easily 3 to 4% of your water by a dosage of with this enzyme around 0.5% in our PBR 2000. Essential Soft PBR 2000, and that works really well. I've done that with products too, where I've needed to lower the water activity. I've used these products, and it works really well. And it's amazing the machinability that you see.
Yeah,
it's such improved machinability.
I think a lot of us create problems with machinability when we don't really know what we're using. So it's really important that technical advisors be transparent with bakers and really explain what is being done. Because when the technical advisors leave and the bakers are in charge and they don't know what they're doing, sometimes they add a little too much of something and it becomes sticky, So sticky doughs can be totally avoidable. And, just reach out and talk a little bit more about what sticky situation you're in, okay? Next question is by Ola D. Maggi. What is the relationship of enzymes on the roughness of bread structure, where volume is good? Okay, what kind of enzymes can be used to avert such issues? So, rough bread but great volume. Can enzymes be used?
Well, we're never trying to achieve a rough crumb.
No, you want a smooth crumb.
Yeah, so you want a smooth crumb. So what that means is you need more oxidation. So you want to tighten that crumb structure. You want to get all your disulfide bond linkages. So again, a glucose oxidase is a strengthener that you want to use. Our essential 1019 is a product that you'd want to use. It's going to give you that strength that you need to tighten it up. So you have to think of in terms of to get disulfide bond links. It's like taking your protein strands and creating railroad tracks. In between those strands, you're laying the ties in between. In between each tie, you're trapping air. And that gives you that honeycomb structure. If your audience can visually see that, that's what we're trying to accomplish. That's what that type of dough conditioner is going to give you.
That's a great analogy. I'm going to imprint it in my mind forever, Keith. So I have another question that goes,
sure.
My flour is weak, right? And we know in certain areas in the world, you just can't get consistent flour.
Right.
What enzyme would you recommend?
Many years ago, let's say not many, 5-6 years ago, everybody would use ADA. That was the magic cure.
I love ADA.
I
love
really
taste and bromate too, by the way.
It really was the cure for that.
It is.
So, but interestingly, glucose oxidase does the same thing. It works the same way. It oxidizes the same way. It pulls hydrogen, allows the same disulfide bond linkages. It works wonderfully. It does it well. And so that would be the recommendation. Our essential 1019 is the product that you'd want to use. You can dose it between 0 and 0.5% to achieve the strength that you need. We see this all the time too, crop to crop, even lot to lot, flour changes. It's always important to look at your COAs as they come in, look at your, the information that comes in, the phrenograph, and see what's changed from lot to lot and make sure that, it's consistent. If you see you have a weaker flour, you're going to have to spike it up with additional oxidation. And that should just be a normal day reality that you have to deal with running a bakery.
Okay. And everybody knows that Keith is so specialized in his job that he knows all the different numbers that goes with his product. Or maybe you have a cheat sheet there, but
no, I know.
Great job, Keith.
No, I know
I wouldn't be able to do that. Anonymous asked, is there any golden rule or specific flour parameters to look for in bread flour which is suitable to bake bread that have a longer shelf life? Loaded question.
So there's multiple stages. So let's start with the first part. What's the first part of the question?
Is there a golden rule?
Well, a golden rule with bread making is like anything else. You want to know your process. You always want to mix your dough to full development. You want to make sure that when you do the window pane test, it actually looks like when you blow a balloon up, it should look just like that. If it's not, you need more mix, but don't take it to breakdown. Just make sure you have full development so you're maximizing the good gluten that you have in your flour. Mm-hmm. You want to make sure you have a long enough intermediate proof, because that dough, after you mix it and you go through your divide and chunker, you want to let that relax before it goes into your sheet and molder, because otherwise you're going to tear it and you're not going to get that that beautiful crumb structure that you're looking for.
So to build on that, Keith, the question is really, is there, you know, an enzyme that can help with that,
Sure.
right? To make bread that's suitable to have longer shelf life.
So if you want to do every company like ours, I don't want to say their names, but I'll just say we all make good products. We all have cocktails of enzymes. I want to say in our CL732, it's a symphony of enzymes that does all these things. It allows you to replace your emulsifiers. It allows you to have a shorter mix. You're going to have better machinability. It's going to give you that strength that you need during your proofing stage. So you have a fine, uniform, soft crumb structure. It's going to have that enzyme to give you the softness that you want, to give you that, you know, 15 to 18 day shelf life that you really want to see. All those in one, and that would be our CL732.
Yeah, and I also want to emphasize that enzyme solutions are not the be all, right? You need to really develop your dough, like what Keith said. You really need to have, I don't know if that's such a thing as good manufacturing practices for bread production, but you really need to have those things as in developed dough, stable dough temperatures, you know, not too quick of a proof time, you know, all those general good practices for bread on top of enzymes.
Yeah,
then you have a really nice soft bread that will last for a long time, you know.
And it's important too, as you're processing your bread, like I said, you go through the mix, you go through your intermediate proofer, all those things are critical that you have that time for the relaxation. When you get to your proofer, you want to make sure when you get at the end of the proof, you've got the right proof height that you're looking for. You want to do that finger test. You want to indent your finger into that loaf. You want to make sure that when you push it in, it doesn't pop back. It should stay indented. If it's not, that means either you're not formulated right or you need a longer proof. All those things are factored in. When you get to your bake, you want to make sure that you have enough moisture in the front, because you want moisture to condense on that product, because that's going to allow that product to rise and not get case hardened. So you have to have enough moisture up front to allow that product to rise. And when it's in the oven, it achieves that height that you're looking for, then you need to remove that moisture to get the coloration you're looking for that finished bake. All those things are factored in before you really want to start adding extra enzymes. All that has to be balanced first.
Right, exactly.
Then you know what enzymes you need to add.
Okay. So this question next is really on top of a lot of people's minds when they start using enzymes. Okay, this is a very typical question. Does enzyme start acting on flour components during the storage of flour, or does it need water for it to act on the substrate?
When you have new flours, it's a green flour, so you will get a certain amount of oxidation that takes place on a green flour. So, so it sits in the mill. Let's just say it sits in a silo for a long time before you get it. Then it's a mature flour, and that's really what you're looking for. It will have the right amount of oxidation you're looking for. But when you start mixing it, you're going to break all that down anyway. You're going to break all those links, and then you want to bring it back together with what you need with your process.
Yeah.
But there is a difference between a green flour and a mature flour and how it mixes. There's no doubt about that. There's a huge difference.
I once went to a plant where they would try to commercialize across different bakeries, and they couldn't figure out why one particular dough conditioning system won't work for all the plants, and that's the reason why. It's not because of the fermentation method or straight dough or sponge dough, it's the flour, and people don't understand how big this issue is when you use green flour versus aged flour. You need different cocktails for those two things, so Keith is right when he says, what kind of flour do you start with? If anything, the key rule to all using enzymes is understanding your flour quality and your flour strength. So that's really important to consider before you start using all this.
And it should come from the mill with a certain amount of age on it, because they carry flour over from year to year, so it's constantly being blended. So it should have the right amount of maturity coming in, and it's already set before it comes to you at 200 Brabender units already from your falling number. So it should function just properly.
Yeah.
That's just
But Keith, I would like to also add there are a lot of smaller size bakeries here, you know, those that that are starting to scale up, that are starting to see all these issues. And sometimes they haven't been taught on what are flour specs or even
right.
to look at flour specs.
Right.
So a lot of patience has to be gone into that area of education and training.
Sure.
And information to the bakers out there is you really need to understand your flour.
Well,
You need to understand that there is such a thing called flour COAs that you can ask for from your miller, and they should be able to provide that, you know, and then from there you'll be able to see what Keith is talking about. Okay. Anonymous asked again, what enzymes can I use in artisan sourdough breads? Good one.
So typically you don't use very much in an artisan style dough, because to do an artisan style dough or formulation, it's going to have a pre-ferment. The pre-ferment typically is 24 hours. So you get a lot of oxidation taking place in that. Sometimes it'll just be a whole fermented dough that you just form into your loaf after 24 hours sitting, let's just call it in a retardation process.
Mm-hmm.
Or, a lot of times, you know, what we do here is, you know, we'll do, you know, 40 or 50% that has retardation on it, or it has, or it just sits with a culture. You know, we'll use one of our cultures or an aromatic yeast, sitting, you know, around 30 C for 24 hours, and then we'll mix it. What we do on occasion with those to get that a little additional strength, we'll use a product like our CL732, but we'll only use it on the dough side. You know, typically you have enough oxidation going on, but if you want a little bit of extra lift and pop, we'll add that in there.
But just to the dough side, right?
Just to the dough side.
Yeah.
Just to the dough side.
Remember that when you use enzymes, long sourdough process, add it to the dough side.
Yeah.
Okay. Pranoy asked, which enzymes work together at lower dosages to produce the best results for white pan bread? I think you might have answered that question, haven't you?
Well, I can quickly answer it. Given what my choice, what I would recommend is, if you have an existing formula, strip everything out, pull out your SSL and datum, use our CL732. It's got the combination of 4 enzymes that you're going to want to use. That's going to give you everything that you need to give you the lift, the volume, the softness, the machinability. And if you still need a little bit of extra strength, add a little ascorbic acid on top of that. Awesome.
Okay, Hugo has a question which I don't really understand. Maybe you do, Keith. What enzyme do you recommend to improve the gringe, Gringne, on French bread? What is that? Yeah, Hugo, you need to be a little more specific. Maybe add a picture or something.
I think he's going after grain, to improve the grain. Well, it depends on what do you want to improve the grain? I'm guessing you probably want maybe a little more lift or something like that. So you could either use our, if you want more lift, our Essential 1019, or you could look at using, when we do baguettes, we'll use our CL732.
Okay, so there is a solution for lifts. Okay. All right, so my next question for you is, what are the key process parameters that need to be optimized in bread and buns manufacturing? What enzymes can I use to increase my bread loaf volume? And how do I know my bread loaf volume needs to be? How do I know? Oh, wow. How do I know if my bread loaf volume needs to be adjusted? How do I determine dosage? This is a loaded question. I'm sorry.
So I think
but let's start with key process parameters.
So it's the same thing like we talked about before. You want to look at your mixing. You want to get to full development. You want to make sure you have the right amount of intermediate proof time to make sure that you can form it and you're not tearing the dough. You want to make sure that you go to a full proof, that when you do the finger indent test, it doesn't spring back. You want to make sure you have a fully proofed product. You want to make sure you're achieving the right height out of your proofer. Mm-hmm. You want to make sure that when you bake your product, that you have the right volume that you're looking for. You want to measure your product. Those are things to remember. You want to also make sure that you have enough moisture in your oven from the beginning to make sure that you don't get any case hardening. So the first, 50% of your oven, you really want mostly right in the beginning, your dampers are closed. As you get to the middle of your oven, you're going to want to start releasing some of that moisture. At the end, dampers are wide open. Evacuate all that moisture, get the coloration that you're looking for. Enzymes for lift. You want to, again, I would pull out, I would use our CL732 because it's got everything in there that you need. If you'd want to just go specifically, if you want just strength, I would use our Essential 1019. That's going to give you the lift that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to replace just your emulsifiers, I would look at using our ER100 or 200. Any one of those will work just fine. Mm-hmm. You can replace your emulsifiers. That will give you the strength that you're looking for. If you want softness, I would look at adding our Essential 1910. Mm-hmm. A tenth of a percent is going to give you softness. If you were to formulate with that to 0.275%, you can eliminate mono and dyes. It depends what you want, how clean you want to go. There's no reason to use mono and dyes anymore because the cost of enzymes have come down dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no
such great substitutes for mono and dyes.
Yeah, Novozymes was the first one that came out with the multigenic amylase, and it's a tremendous enzyme. But now the price has come down, and now you can use them at much higher levels because it's much more affordable today. And we should be, because there's tremendous benefits. If anything you heard me today, that's the main enzyme that I'm talking about. That really is the magic enzyme for everything. It gives you lift, it gives you softness, it gives you machinability. It does everything for you. Okay. It really is a great enzyme.
So yeah, to summarize that for what Keith said, look at your mix, intermediate proof, your full proof and up to proof height after the proofer, bake volume and baking parameters. Okay, so those 5 things are really important in terms of key processes. And to do the dosage and to understand dosage better, you really need to work with someone like Keith to get it right for you. Okay, so thank you, Mark, for really translating what Grinch means. As he says, it's a snack. So he's thinking perhaps they mean what enzymes can help with the crisp and crackle of the baguette crust. Is there any?
So that's going to just come down to your bake.
Oh, okay.
That's going to come down to your bake. Yeah.
What do you mean, like better heat transfer or what?
Well, no,
better steam?
At the end, yeah. You want to make sure you have enough steam up front so you get that sheen on it. So you want a lot of steam up front. Mm-hmm. And then you go through your full bake, and then you want to make sure at the end you have your dampers wide open, and that's going to help.
Right, to dry it out. You really have to dry it out. Right. Okay.
So that's what everybody's always looking for. After you bake that bread, you have a window. That's why when it's sold, it's in paper bags, so it's constantly giving off moisture. So you have that crispy crust. If you take that crust and put it in a paper bag, within 6 hours, it's getting soft and it's not very good anymore. So there's a reason why. I mean, the holy grail, as we would always say, why can't we achieve that for 30 days? Can't. You just can't.
You just can't.
You can't put enough moisture in the bread to allow that moisture to continue to be released over that time period.
Yeah. Okay, so another question. How are enzymes for frozen dough different from those for non-frozen systems? Great question.
They're the same. They're the same. They're the same enzymes. You're gonna want to use them all. We have because everything that I touched base on, for a frozen dough, you want to use a xylanase because you want to get the maximum gluten development. You want to use a glucose oxidase. You want to get that lift. Ascorbic acid is great, used in low dosages. I would say no more than 60 to 90 parts per million. You want to use those. You want to use an alpha amylase because it's going to give you a little bit of lift and to give you some softness over time. Those work well. CL732 works tremendous. We have other products that can replace bromates. They're called PBR. We have a PBR FD that is specific for that type of product that has those combinations in there also. So we can work with the bakers on all this.
Yeah, I think that's a general perception that it's different because I think it's not because I think some people are just trying to cross compare different products. Frozen dough enzyme for a croissant is going to be different from a frozen dough pizza crust. It's just going to be different with products, but it's not going to be different frozen, for a frozen versus a non-frozen croissant or frozen versus a non-frozen pizza crust. So that's where a lot of people get confused on that one, I believe. Okay. Dirk asks, I have problems sometimes with a par-baked crust being tough when I bake it, usually a top pizza from frozen. Can you share a brief checklist of how I can troubleshoot the formula and process? Par-baked crust, tough.
Par-baked crust, tough. Okay, you're probably losing too much moisture. I think you probably have too much moisture loss. That would be one area. Another thing I would recommend is formulating with a multigenic amylase. You know, something.
Right, and also your freeze thaw. You know, it's just like during a distribution, when you do have a lot of freeze thaw action and your distributors are leaving it out at the dock and then putting it back in the freezer, that's a lot of moisture being lost, a lot of oxidation happening, a lot of release of moisture, you know, so just watch your logistics operation and how you distribute your products. Make sure that that's not too many thaw and freeze cycles involved, because that's really going to create some staling in your crust.
So to build on that, every time you go through a freeze thaw cycle, you have what they call aggregation of the protein. So think of the proteins are holding all the water. So every time you go through a freeze thaw cycle, it thaws. And when it refreezes, the gluten protein, the proteins tighten, kind of like this. It gets tighter and tighter. It drives out that water. And if you ever look at a package that's been in your freezer for a long time, every freezer goes through a cycle. You got all this snow inside the package. That's all the moisture from your product being released from the aggregation of your protein. So your proteins are becoming tighter and tighter. It's driving out the moisture, and now you end up with a drier product.
And to add to that too, you know, a lot of people who start out with this cross process don't have a sophisticated system, Keith. Just remember that. So sometimes they package wrongly. Can you elaborate a little bit more about packaging and how important that is?
Well, having a good frozen distribution system really is the key. You can put, no matter what package you put, whether you put a barrier film or not, you're still going to get the snow inside the package. If you have freeze thaw cycles, you can't change that.
That's true.
There is no magic package solution. You know, working with a large food company, I mean, we looked at lots of different packaging methods, and you know, barrier film in a frozen pizza crust works wonderfully well. It works really, really well. You know, with a modified atmosphere, you know, especially when it's a raw dough or a pre-proof frozen dough. Mm-hmm. But beyond that,
yeah, you know, as long as you abuse that product, nothing's gonna work.
There's not a lot that can save it. There really isn't. You get a few. You're good for a few cycles, but beyond that, it's not going to work the same. Nor is if it's a raw dough, nor is the yeast. Every time you go through a cycle, you're actually killing the yeast. So the efficacy of the yeast is going to go down. The structure inside your dough system is changing. You drive out that moisture, the ingredients aren't going to function properly anymore. They're no longer properly hydrated. So all those things play in.
Okay. Next question is asking, in a semi-industrial process of white bread, in what part of the process would you add the enzymes, in the sponge or the rest of the formula at the time of mixing?
I would add the enzyme on the dough side.
Always.
Never the sponge. Always on the dough side.
Yes.
The sponge side is for fermentation and flavor and to denature the proteins. And that's just completely separate.
Improve hydration and machinability of the whole proteins, you know. Correct me if I'm wrong, you're actually wasting enzymes if you put it on the sponge side. Right,
because they're only going to go so far. Yep. Because you don't have typically your sponge is in 30 to 40% range. And so you have the rest of the flour that has all this substrate. So it's just sitting there idle. Yeah. So there's
no reason to put it in the sponge.
Should all be always on the dough side.
Right. Next question. If I use powdered sourdoughs, what enzymes can I use to enhance the effect of sourdough and have its effect in a shorter time? And how long is it possible to shorten? How much can you shorten?
Well, I think the bigger question is, what do you want to enhance?
Yeah. That's
really the big question. If you're looking for lift, you want strength, you know, our essential 1019 would give you the lift. With sourdough, it's all about flavor development. And so time is your friend. You know, that's what you're looking for. That's why you go through the long fermentation process to develop that sour, to, you know, give that end product that you're looking for. I mean, there's nothing better than a good sourdough when you macerate that product in your mouth. You've got that long chew, and the product, after you swallow it, finishes with this incredible sour coming across your palate. That's what you're really looking for. And so, you know, usually it's just, if there's an enzyme, you're just looking for a little bit of lift. CL732 or 1019, those work just fine.
Great. Okay. Pernoy asked, which enzymes would help in reducing, shortening in puff pastries? Oh, I love that question. I've seen that question so many times.
To replace shortening.
Reduce.
Well,
I don't think you can totally
reduce.
replace.
No. I would, you know, you want a softer product. I'd want to formulate with a maltogenic amylase. You know, again, our 1910.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem. When you remove shortening, you're going to increase staling.
Right. So that's the direction I would go with. You want a high level in that. You know, somewhere in the neighborhood of, you know, beyond 0.25%, 0.25 to maybe 0.32 in that range. That's what I would do, because it's just the staling that's going on.
Okay. And so we have actually reached our limit on this seminar, Keith. Do you want to keep going on, or?
We can go a little bit longer. Sure. That's fine. A little bit longer.
So we will give all of you another 10 minutes. So if you want to come forward with your questions, please post them in the Q&A, and Keith and I will try to finish this session up. It's been a great session, and all the questions are just amazing. I love it. Those are all application questions. And just to get the questions flowing in, just give me a second. Sure. I got one really important one that you have to answer, because we keep seeing these questions coming across to BAKERpedia. And it's got to do with pita bread. Flatbreads are such a huge hit right now. And we keep getting questions on flatbreads. Okay.
Excellent.
Should I use ascorbic acid for pita bread? And what other dough conditioners can be used for pita bread? Okay,
excellent question. So there's two things you can do. Ascorbic acid, as I said before, it's going to really start working in the mix. So when you make a pita bread or even a flatbread, you're going to sheet the product. The caveat is you're going to get that disc is now going to become an oval. So what I would recommend, that's the problem you struggle with. So what you want to do is you want to formulate, we have a product called Fermate Superlax. Fermate Superlax is a high glutathione yeast. It's going to give you, it's going to work just like L-cysteine. It's going to be a dough relaxer.
Oh, nice.
So it replaces, you know, any type of L-cysteine or any other, you no longer need to use protease. Proteases were great enzymes. The caveat is that once you start using them, once they start working, they keep on going. If the line shut down, it's a problem. So you don't, and especially with, when you sheet a product, you have to be very careful with that. So I would use our Fermate Superlax, you know, a dosage of around 0.25%. That in combination with ascorbic acid is going to give the lift that you want. So now you've got the finished product that you want. The next step is now you want that shelf life. So then you're going to add our Essential Soft 1910. That is going to give you that softness over time, and more importantly, the rollability that you want. Without that enzyme, by day 3, it's going to crack.
Yeah, in a half.
it will. With our Essential 1910 at a high dosage of around 0.275%, because we've done a lot of work with this, you're going to get that rollability that you want. You can be very happy with the end product.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to end with the cake questions, but one more question before the cake question. Which enzymes could help in balancing the variations in wheat flour quality? We all get wheat flour variation, sometimes from silo to silo. What is the best enzyme that we could use to even that out?
So the variations that you see, to me, the best enzyme you're going to use is our Essential 1019. That's going to give you the strength that you need. But again, you have to be cognizant of, if you know you have a weaker flour, you're going to want to add it. When your flour is stronger, you're going to want to take it out. So you have to be very cognizant. If you just want to use a
Vigilant.
if you want to use more of a simple approach, you could probably get away with using our CL732 and just use it all the time. And it's gonna work with the substrates that you have in the dough. It's gonna give you everything that you want.
Right.
Reduce mix, improve pan flow. It's gonna give you the lift and that really nice uniform soft crumb structure and volume and softness over time that you'd want.
Okay. All right, so let's wrap it up. If you have any more cake questions, now's the kind of time to ask all your cake questions. First one is, Jessica asked, are there any enzymes to help with the rise of a cream cake?
So
I'm gonna stretch my imagination.
I'm gonna let you kind of go with that because I'm not, I'm a bread expert.
Yeah, you are a bread expert, and I have to say, with the rise of a cream cake, it has everything to do with the amount of bubbles you put into the batter, right? So not so much enzymes, I believe, but you need to use the right kind of flour to create the right kind of viscosity to create, to entrap as many bubbles as you can.
If I go back to my culinary days when we were doing cakes, I'm gonna say it goes to eggs. You have to have the right balance of eggs. So I'm not an expert on
I
this,
really
so
think if you're having problem with your cream cake, it's got to do with the shortening and shortening liquid batter ratio. Okay, and I don't think any enzymes are going to really help with that. So I'm going to refer you to Richard Charpentier, who is on our Baker Help, and he should be able to help you reformulate your cream cake if you need. Next question is, what enzyme can I use to replace egg in cake?
Again, magical question for me.
Yeah.
If I had to reach and stretch, and I'm certainly not an expert on this, I would want to strengthen your protein. So I would look at, a glucose oxidase.
Yeah, I would do that too. Definitely.
But I'm reaching, so I don't have the answer.
Toughen up the flour too. We'll have to see, and it really depends on what kind of flour you use. Do you use a heat treated flour, or do you use a chlorinated flour? Those are a lot of other different questions, but unfortunately this is not the right session to ask that because we don't have a cake expert here. I'll bring a cake expert to you in the future sometime soon. We have a bread expert here, and Keith, I really appreciate you being on here today.
It's great to be here.
And your knowledge just on the pizza and flatbread side of things is just amazing. So thank you for coming on.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate all the attendees on here today. We've seen a phenomenal increase in sign up and attendees. And of course, this recording is going to be available next week. So if you have any more product questions that you need solutions on, we've included the email and website for Lallemand, where you can reach out to Lallemand, who is an awesome sponsor. Thank you for sponsoring this free session for everyone and letting us talk to you, Keith. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.